You are not the same person you were. God made sure of that. Through the season that broke you, through the prayer that finally moved something, you came out of that season freer, cleaner, more anchored in who God said you were than you had ever been. And then someone you love reached back in, gently, with a voice you trust, and slowly, so slowly you almost missed it, you have been drifting back toward the exact thing God pulled you out of. This video is about that drift and how it ends today. 4 signs that someone you love is pulling you back into what God already delivered you from, and what God is asking you to do when the person pulling you back is not an enemy, but someone you genuinely love. Stay through all 4. The 4th sign is the one that will change how you understand every relationship connected to your deliverance, and how you carry both the love and the freedom forward without sacrificing one for the other. Sign number 1, the comfort of the familiar. Around this person, the old version of you feels natural again, not forced, natural. The old language returns, the old habits resurface, the old way of thinking about yourself, smaller, more limited, more defined by what you came from than by what God is building, quietly reactivates in their presence like a muscle that never fully forgot how to move. And because it feels natural, it does not feel like regression, it feels like comfort. This is the mechanism God warned about long before you encountered it. In Numbers 11, Israel had been out of Egypt for months. God was providing manna, daily, faithful, sufficient. But the people began to weep and say, "We remember the fish we ate in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons." They were not remembering the slavery. They were remembering the flavor. The comfort of what was familiar had filtered out everything God had delivered them from and left only the parts that felt good to return to. This is exactly what happens in your relationship with this person. Their presence does not remind you of the pain of the old season. It reminds you of the comfort, the familiarity, the version of yourself that required less faith, less of the costly transformation God took you through. And in that comfort, you drift back, not in rebellion, but in relief. What God is doing behind this sign, He is exposing an underdeveloped root system. Comfort has always competed with transformation, because transformation is inherently uncomfortable, and the soul will choose comfort given any reasonable opportunity. God is not removing the comfort of the relationship. He is asking you to build a deeper comfort in your new identity, one that no longer requires the old self to feel at home. Here is what you do now. Identify one specific behavior, one specific mindset, or one specific way of speaking about yourself that only reappears around this person. Name it. Write it down. Because what you can name, you can interrupt. And what you interrupt consistently becomes a pattern you no longer drift into unconsciously. Sign number 2, the regression. This one is harder to receive because it requires you to look at yourself honestly, not at the person, not at the relationship, but at the version of you that has been showing up since this person became present in your delivered life. Ask yourself plainly, who have I been becoming since this person has been close? Not who they are, not what they intend, who you have been becoming. Because regression does not always feel like going backward. Sometimes it feels like softening what God sharpened, like moderating what God intensified, like slowly returning to a version of yourself that the relationship finds easier to hold, and calling it balance. In Galatians 2, Paul describes the moment Peter, who knew the truth, who had walked with Jesus, who had been explicitly transformed by the encounter, began to withdraw and separate himself from the Gentiles when certain people arrived from Jerusalem. He was not deceived. He was not confused about the truth. He regressed under the social pressure of a relationship, and Paul said plainly, "You are not acting in line with the truth of the gospel." The regression was visible to someone outside the relationship before Peter could see it from inside it. This is the grace this video is offering you right now. Someone outside your relationship, outside the comfort, outside the history, outside the love, is telling you plainly what Paul told Peter. The version of you that has been showing up is not the version God built. Here is what God is doing behind this sign. He is not asking you to harden yourself or become unreachable. He is asking you to become conscious. Unconscious regression is the most dangerous kind because it requires no decision, no rebellion, no deliberate choice. It simply requires you to stop paying attention. God is reactivating your attention. He is asking you to see the drift clearly so you can make a conscious choice about whether to continue it. Do this tonight. Compare two versions of yourself side by side. Who were you 90 days after your deliverance? What you believed, how you prayed, what you were willing to do in obedience. Sign number 3, the justification. This is the sign that makes the pattern almost impossible to break, because the weapon being used against your deliverance is not fear, it is not manipulation, it is not pressure, it is love. And love is the one thing you will justify almost anything to protect. You have been telling yourself that maintaining this relationship at the cost of the ground God gave you is the loving thing to do, that your deliverance does not have to change the dynamic, that you can hold the freedom and the relationship exactly as it was, that asking anything of this relationship in the name of your healing is selfish. Love has been made the reason to stay connected to what God freed you from, and that justification is so noble, so selfless-sounding, so genuinely motivated by real affection, that it has been invisible to you as a strategy of the enemy. In 1 Samuel 15, God gave Saul a direct instruction, complete, specific, non-negotiable. Saul did not fully obey. And when Samuel confronted him, Saul said, "I did obey God, but the soldiers kept the best sheep and cattle to sacrifice to the Lord your God." The justification was religious, the motivation was presented as honor, and the partial obedience, the piece of the old thing that was kept, was framed as an act of love toward God rather than as a failure to trust Him. God called it rebellion, not because Saul's love was false, but because love, when it becomes a reason to hold on to what God said to release, is no longer functioning as love. It is functioning as an anchor to what was. And you have been holding that anchor, lovingly, faithfully, while the current of your deliverance has been fighting to move you forward. Here is what God is doing behind this sign. He is redefining what love looks like in this season. The most loving thing you can do for this person is not to stay connected to them at the cost of your deliverance. It is to stay anchored in what God did, because a fully delivered you is the most useful, most whole, most genuinely present version of yourself that this person will ever encounter. Your freedom does not diminish your love for them. It is the fullest expression of it. Do this. Write down the specific justification you have been using to maintain the connection to what God delivered you from. Then ask one honest question beneath it. Is this protecting the relationship, or is it protecting the old version of myself that the relationship was built on? Because those are two very different things, and only one of them is worth the cost you have been paying. Sign number 4, the grief. This is the sign nobody prepares you for, because everything in this video has been building toward one moment, the moment you fully see what is happening, accept what God is asking, and then feel the full weight of what it costs. Not the cost of staying, the cost of not staying. Because choosing your deliverance over the pull of this relationship does not feel like victory, it feels like loss. It feels like choosing God at the expense of someone you genuinely love, like drawing a boundary that the relationship was not built to hold, like becoming someone this person may not recognize, may not be comfortable with, may quietly grieve, even while you are standing in the fullest version of what God designed you to be. This grief is real. Do not spiritualize it away. Do not rush it. In Genesis 19, when Lot's wife looked back at Sodom, most people read her action as disobedience. But look at what she was leaving. Her home, her life, her community, the entire world she had built and known and loved. The instruction to not look back was not cruel. It was the only way the deliverance could be completed, because what she loved was real, and what was behind her was genuinely worth grieving. The grief does not mean you are wrong. It means you loved something real. And releasing it, even at God's instruction, costs something real. But here is what the grief cannot be allowed to do. It cannot be allowed to become the reason you turn back. Because Lot's wife did not turn back in rebellion. She turned back in longing, and the longing was enough. Your grief for this person, for this relationship as it was, for the version of yourself that fit inside it so comfortably, that grief is valid. Honor it. Weep over it if you need to, and then keep moving forward. Because what is ahead of your deliverance is worth more than what the longing is asking you to return to. Here's what God is doing. He He is not asking you to stop loving this person. He is asking you to love them from the position of your deliverance rather than from the position of your drift. The grief is part of the process, not the end of it. And what God has prepared on the other side of this grief is not a life emptied of love. It is a life full of a love that no longer costs you what God paid to give you. Here is what you do. Give yourself permission to grieve this, specifically and honestly, before God, without rushing to resolution. Write a prayer that names exactly what this relationship has meant to you and exactly what it has cost your deliverance, not as an accusation, as an honest laying down of something before God, trusting Him with both the person you love and the ground He gave you, because He is big enough to hold both, and He is asking you to trust Him with what you cannot hold simultaneously on your own. Before you conclude, this video applies directly to your situation. Pause and ask yourself 3 honest questions. Question 1. Is the person I have been thinking about throughout this video genuinely connected to something God delivered me from? Or am I in a season of transition that is simply uncomfortable, and I am looking for an external reason to explain an internal difficulty? Not every relationship that challenges your growth is pulling you backward. Some are refining you. Ask God specifically whether what you are experiencing is regression or refinement. They do not feel the same when you sit with them honestly before Him. Question 2. Have I prayed for this person with the same intensity that I have prayed about this situation? Not prayed against them, prayed for them. Because the person connected to your old season is not your enemy. They are someone God loves as specifically and as deeply as He loves you. 3. Is what I am sensing leading me toward greater Christ-likeness, more love, more wisdom, more genuine freedom? Or is it leading me toward isolation, suspicion, and a spiritual pride that uses deliverance as a reason to disengage from difficult relationships? Genuine discernment always produces more of God's character in you, not less. If what you are receiving is making you harder, colder, or more entitled in your relationships, bring that to God before you bring it to anyone else. Every sign in this video has a corresponding discernment tool, a framework for identifying what a recurring presence has actually been exposing in you. So you respond to what God is measuring. Free guide in the description. Use it before the pattern repeats one more time. God did not deliver you so you could spend the rest of your life fighting to hold on to what He gave you. He delivered you so you could walk in it freely, completely, without the constant backward pull of a love that was never designed to cost you your freedom. The person you love is not your enemy, but the pull, left unnamed and unaddressed, will cost you the very thing God paid the highest price to give you. Type, "I choose the ground," in the comments. Find the person beneath you who typed the same thing and leave them one sentence, the kind that reminds someone fighting to hold their deliverance that the ground God gave them is worth every single thing it costs to keep. Subscribe. Preparation never feels like preparation while you are inside it, and deliverance never feels permanent until you decide to stop negotiating with what it freed you from. That decision starts today.